One of the last steps in finishing your pieces on the wheel is called footing or trimming. This step happens at the leather hard stage after you've already thrown your pieces. Not only does this step make the bottom of your pieces look beautiful, it also gets rid of any extra waste at the bottom of your pieces to help them dry more evenly and faster. And then it also makes your bases nice and flat so they sit flat on the table. In order to trim, you will need your leather hard piece and a variety of ribbon tools, a large ribbon tool, a rib tool, a needle tool, your plastic clay, a wheel, and then you will also need your splash pans to catch all of the little scraps that will come off when you're footing. Here's a fired example of a piece that has been footed. Notice that the rim sticks out and then it's actually lower underneath. This helps if you've got a super thick base, so you don't lose the height or shape, but you do lose a little bit of the depth from underneath. Now that we know why we foot and what we need to foot, I'm going to go over some of the tools. So the first thing you need to have is a variety of ribbon tools. These have blades on the end. I like to have a curved one and one with a sharp corner. The curved ones are great for smoothing things out, and the sharp corner gets to get into all of those little nooks and crannies, and it also helps with any sort of sharp corner you need. You then need a ribbon tool that has a big flat end. This helps for flattening your pieces, a needle tool, and you need some plastic clay and a rib tool. Usually I would be throwing with a bat because I have bat pins on my wheel, but for footing and trimming, I'm not going to use the bat because I have these concentric circles on my wheel that will help me place all of my pieces and get them perfectly in the center. I have two pieces that are about leather hard and ready to be trimmed, but as I'm touching the bottom of my piece, it is squishing. So I can do a little test and feel if my piece is not leather hard and if pushing a little bit of pressure into my piece makes it cave in, it's not ready. So I'm going to pull my other piece, which is totally leather hard, and when I give it a little pressure, it doesn't cave in. This is safe to start footing and trimming on the wheel. Now that I have all my tools ready, it's time for me to start measuring my base, and this tells me how thick all of my pieces are. For this step, I'm using my needle tool, sticking it on the inside on the flat space, and then I'm resting my wooden tool up on the lip of my piece so that I can see how thick it is from the bottom of the inside of the cup all the way to the top. I'm going to mark with my finger where the bottom of my wooden tool comes to so that I can see. And I can see that from the bottom of the needle tool all the way to that point is how thick it is from the inside of my mug. And then I'm going to take my needle tool and just set it next to my piece so that I can see the difference. And that should give me an approximate thickness of my base. This measurement told me that I have a fairly thick base, and that means that I can play along a lot more with my footing, but if I had a really thin base, I might just be trimming and getting it flat and not a whole lot more. Once I know what I'm working with, I'm going to use the concentric circles on my wheel to put my mug as close to the center as possible. Now from the angle in the video, you can't see that it's directly in the center, but it's as close to the center as I can get it. Then I'm going to take my plastic clay and roll it into thick coils. I need 3 of them to create a sort of tripod, and I'm going to really gently attach them to my cup and to the wheel just by making some fingerprints and putting it at the seam where the cup meets the wheel. I'm just gently pressing my fingers and making some fingerprints in there and not trying to change the shape of my mug. With my mug securely attached, I'm going to turn my wheel onto a medium speed. If you're right-handed, it's going to still go counterclockwise. If you're left-handed, it's going to go clockwise. From there you can see that it's wobbling a little bit, and that means it's not directly in the center, but the way I can tell where to put it to get it to the center is to take my needle tool and hold it with both hands to make one concentric circle that is in the middle of my pot. So when I turn the wheel off here, I can see that even though my circle is directly in the middle of the wheel, the fact that it's not directly in the middle of my cup means that I need to shift my cup toward the skinny part of the circle or the skinny part of the rim in order to get it directly in the middle of my wheel. To do this, I do need to remove one of my little tripods, and I'm going to scooch it over and re-put my tripod back on to hold it firmly to the wheel. Now when I turn my wheel back on, you can see that my piece is wobbling a whole lot less, and if I get rid of this middle circle here, you can see that it is directly in the center of my wheel now. I'm going to recheck one more time just to make sure that my piece is directly in the center of the wheel, and you can see when I stop the wheel that it is just a little bit off, and because I want everything to be exactly in the middle, I'm just going to scoot it a little bit toward that skinny part just to make sure it's in the middle. This part of the video is sped up, but you can see that once I get rid of my line and make a new line, this new position of my piece is exactly in the middle, and it's exactly perfect on all sides. Now that it's exactly in the center, it's time to flatten the base. I'm going to use my ribbon tool that has the nice flat and really large blade on it in order to flatten the base and make it super level. Notice that I'm using two hands. I'm not just holding the tool with one hand. My other hand is actually holding the piece on the wheel, making sure it doesn't fly off, as well as stabilizing the tool. I'm going to periodically clean my tool to keep it nice and sharp. Now that my base is nice and flat, I'm going to use my squared off tool to start trimming the corner of my piece. Another way to know whether or not your piece is ready to be trimmed is that all of the shavings that are coming off while it's being trimmed should feel like grated cheese. If you have a really thin base, you are probably only going to be able to round off the corner and get the base nice and flat before you need to remove your piece from the wheel and sign it. Otherwise, you risk carving through the entire bottom of your piece. If you do not have a super thin base, you can use the next step of creating a rim. Now the rim is where the inside is carved out, but you have left the outside rim, and what that does is it makes your piece a lot less likely to warp. For this part, I'm using my ribbon tool that has a sharper corner, and I get to play a little bit more with the overall shape of my piece, because when I did measure, I did find that my base was a little bit thicker. I've sped this next part up quite a bit. That's why it looks like my wheel is going a lot faster. But I'm going to use a variety of tools to just kind of check over my piece. And if my piece does start to come loose, I can always tighten it. But I'm going to use a variety of tools to start trimming away all of those extra bits and bobs around my base. This part is really an opportunity to change the bottom shape of your piece. And now I'm going to start working on the rim. So I'm going to draw a light line of where I want it to go, and then I'm going to take my steeped angled ribbon tool and start to kind of carve away on the inside of the rim. And then I'm going to pull it toward the center. I'm always working on the right hand side of the wheel because I'm right-handed. Throughout this process, you're going to see me switch to a variety of different tools. I like all of the curved pieces to smooth out any lines that I have, and also if I've got any curves in my piece, I'm going to use those. I like my flat ribbon tool to smooth out and level the rim, and then I also like my metal rib tool to get rid of any little last bit of gunk and to just kind of finish my piece. It's perfectly acceptable to stop at that last step, but if you want to take it one step further, you can manipulate the form while it's on the wheel. So I think I want to create a more prominent base to my piece, as well as change the form just a little bit. And I can also add some decorative elements while my piece is on the wheel. So I can add these stripes with my tools, and that plays a lot with the glaze. It gives me just a little bit more texture in my piece. And once I'm happy, I can sign the base. If you're in a class, I would sign it with not only your initials, but also your class period. And then you're going to carefully remove your piece from the wheel, and now would be the time to put any sort of handle or decorative element you want to on it. Then you can take all of the scraps and those can be recycled, but this is a fully finished and footed piece.